Duke, you're over here.
Over.
Oh, you didn't know? Your ass better call somebody.
You should have kept your belts.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. Welcome to another live episode of Beyond the Square Circle. I'm your host, former four-time IBWA World Champion, T-Dog Tomasio. My co-host is Spike Stevens.
How you doing?
Over here. Good to have you back again, dude.
Always.
And the other co-host for tonight's special is my man, Craig Block.
Oh, it's just always a pleasure. Always a
Yeah, the
pleasure.
next big co-host is...
Yeah. I'll lose my head here. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, give me that.
And the belts you see us trying to fix up over here belong to tonight's guest. We have a holdover from last month, Pitbull Luke Schneider. Welcome back, Duke. And
Thank you,
Countess.
he brought the Countess again with him. And we're hopeful of having a more informative discussion than last month. We're going to devote the whole hour to Pitbull and his career and maybe some interesting stories he might be able to tell us. You couldn't have done that on the way in, huh? You hockey.
Seat's taken.
You're not a big help here, dude.
So yeah, I'm never a big help. So.
Well, that much is certain.
Thank you.
I just want to
appreciate
make sure I
that.
turn off my phone or lower it.
Yeah, that would be a good idea.
Yeah. No more
So,
interruptions.
Yeah.
well, we want to
Well,
start.
we want to start with Duke and whatever topic we want to bring up first. You know, because we talked a lot out in the green room with that disaster piece known as the control room.
Yeah, well, to begin with, what titles are these?
Okay, the one there on the far left, I won in April 20th of 90. That is the United States Heavyweight Taped Fist Wrestling Championship.
That's this belt here.
And
Or-
that's
No,
the
that's
silver
this
one. The gold one here, I didn't win that belt. That was the USA Pro Wrestling Hardcore Championship. The reason as to why I did not win that championship was because when the current champion, Jack Sabbath, witnessed my match prior to the one that we were to have, he did, in fact, present the championship back to the promoter of the federation, and his question was, what am I supposed to do against a guy like that?
He was referring to you.
Yes.
He was kind of afraid you were going to hurt him.
Well, when it comes to something like that, if you're afraid of getting hurt, then you just don't step into the ring because it's very likely to happen.
Well, it's like what they always say. Small guy, big guy. Who's gonna survive?
Who hits harder?
Well, it all depends on how we look at things. People have different expressions for different things. They say the bigger they are, the harder they fall. No, I'm against that. I say the bigger they are, the harder they hit. The smaller you are, the faster you'll go down.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've experienced that myself. I mean, we talked about Warzone last time you were here and what a monster he was.
Yeah, may rest in peace.
Yeah, but also you were telling us a bunch of different stories about the different titles you've won, some of the war zones you've actually seen.
And,
Some of
a lot
the
of great behind-the-scenes stories.
yeah.
Well, the size and physical structure of a wrestler also determines his abilities as well as his style. Now, Warzone, bless him, Warzone was in fact a physical giant. He was a natural physical giant.
That's for sure.
And the surprising thing about Warzone was that he was fast
True.
and he was agile.
Very true. We remember that.
Right. Oh, yeah. We
You see,
remember that.
I've seen them that big, I've seen them that agile, I've seen them that fast, but I've never seen them with all three of those properties simultaneously.
Wow.
So Warzone basically came as a surprise to you.
Well, I figured when I saw pictures of him, when I saw him in action on a few occasions, I said to myself, well, he's just another big guy who more than likely can't get out of his own way. Chances are he's going to blow up within the first 2 minutes of the match. The only problem I'm going to have with him is keeping him on his feet. I had never so underestimated a wrestler as much as I did him because he fooled me completely.
Well, he fooled us pretty
Oh,
much very
yeah.
completely too.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew he was strong, but I threw a 215-pound flying cross body block at the man. He stood there and caught me.
Turned it into
Turned
a
into a
slam.
fall-away slam. I hit the mat. He hit me. My lungs hit the ceiling, and found the urge to stay there. Hard to resist. You know. But you've probably had more matches against Warzone than I did. I only wrestled
Well,
him twice.
actually, I only wrestled him one time. And that was a taped fist match that we had back in
1996 at the College of Staten Island, right?
97.
No, it was 96. I was there.
It was. Well, whatever the case may be, I do know that the taped fist matches, as you know, they go by 3-minute rounds like boxing matches. Mm-hmm. And I was fortunate enough to have knocked him down in the third round. I just managed to catch him at a sensitive spot, and
Oh yes, I think we had a discussion about that. My late ex-girlfriend distracted Warzone. When she called him from ringside and she waved to him. He got a little glassy-eyed. He turned around and you knocked him out.
right.
Yeah, that was in '96,
Yeah, I had no-
January of '96.
Well, God bless that woman, whoever she was, because she might have saved my life.
Well, Eileen, you can be happy. You can be happy looking down, realizing you saved Pitbull's life.
Well, she certainly saved my championship, I'll say that.
Well, yeah. I don't think she planned it that way, but
But
you
it happened,
know.
you know. Hey, it went in your favor. That's the important thing.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Well, Warzone was being a bad boy.
Yeah.
I mean, he hit the man in the fist with his face.
Oh, yeah. He's been known to do that.
You know, the thing is, I got to know Warzone outside of the ring. A very nice guy.
Yes.
You know, he had a very nice personality, nice disposition.
Yeah.
It was just when he got in the ring, the man was an animal.
Well, you find that with certain people. Bulldog Brower, God rest him, the man was he and I became friends right after our first meeting, and we did some traveling together. He stayed at my house from time to time when he was working in New York, and he was another one. I mean, as as demented as he might have appeared or actually was, he was also a man of logic. You could sit and talk to him for hours, and in reality, he wouldn't say a bad word about anybody. You know, he was like that.
And he was basically psychotic in the ring.
Yeah.
I remember watching Bulldog Brower many times when I was younger.
See, and it was
You guys remember him, don't you?
Bulldog Brower.
Dick the Bulldog Brower.
Oy.
They were, I don't know, but then again, I was a kid. I thought he was a really insane individual.
Well, he was one of these fellas that once the bell sounded, he lost his grip on sanity, and you know he was physically strong. He was physically tough, and despite his brawling tactics, he could wrestle just as good as any real disciplined wrestler could. He knew his holds, he knew his reverses, he knew all these things.
Well, I remember seeing a lot of that with him. It's just that you couldn't really see it clearly because of the gimmick he had, being totally out there,
Right.
you know. But he was actually that cool of an individual, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, he was. He was very good company too. He taught me a lot about how to make money in the business when you come right down to it. You know, how not to get snared, how not to get conned, and all that time, how to be a gentleman too. And the thing about him that really drew my respect was nothing ever came before his children. His children were by far the most important thing in his life, regardless.
He was a real family man.
Yes, he was. Back in
That's fascinating to hear.
See, back in '78, his daughter Marcy, she was 14 years old, And I used to call him in Delaware from time to time, and she always used to answer the phone. Now, that child was only 14 years old, and talking to her was like talking to somebody our age.
That's interesting. Very grown up,
Very,
very
Yes.
intelligent young
Yes, she
lady.
was. She was a very mature child, and it was always a pleasure talking to her. The morning after he came back from Australia, came in that night. He's got all these bills waiting for him on the table, and he really wasn't in a very good mood. But he was always very civil, and
Let me guess, he drop kicked the table.
well, he might have done more than just drop kick the table. I mean, if he drop kicked the table, it would have landed on the moon somewhere. But yeah, but all in all, he took care of business the right way. He signed another contract with WWF, and Vince Senior, God bless that man, gave him enough money to take care of all those bills, and he did quite well.
Well, I do remember last month when you were here, you mentioned how good Vince Sr. could be to his employees.
Yes.
He was always there to help out when he was needed.
Well, Vince, you see, he was a 24/7 gentleman and promoter and everything that went along with it. He was more of a family man than a promoter because he treated the boys like they were family. That was always his first priority. How are the fellas doing? And whatever was needed, he saw to it that they got it. Now, the man had a heart, and he'd always give somebody the benefit of the doubt. Now, sometime prior to that, Dr. Jerry Graham, may he rest in peace, Jerry had some issues back then, and Jerry, unfortunately, he was drinking rather heavily at the time.
I remember reading about that myself.
Yes, and it had already reached a critical proportion. So, as I understand, I could be wrong in this, but from what I gather, he was looking to find re-involvement, and they sent him to the farm. He came off the farm sober. He was down to about 240 pounds, and Vince Sr. had him once again in the ring on Saturday mornings, doing his thing, and for a man his age, he was doing quite well, too.
Yeah, I seem to remember that. You're talking about what, during the mid-'70s, right?
Early 70s.
'Cause I do remember seeing Crazy Luke Graham, as they called him.
Yes.
I remember seeing him many times and always bullying him. I never liked any of the Graham brothers.
Well, they used to call them the Golden Grahams. And they were the
That's
fellas.
a cereal now, folks.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, you see, Jerry and Eddie Graham, they, for the most part, may have revolutionized wrestling back at the time. They were the only the only tag team that simultaneously had the world and United States heavyweight tag team championship together.
Wait a minute. Vince had a U.S. tag title
Yes, he did.
at one time? I wasn't aware of that.
Yes, well, this goes back to the early 50s.
Uh-huh.
And these fellas, they really brought money in there. They fans always came to see them either win or lose or whatever. As long as they could see the Golden Grahams, they wanted to be there.
Yeah. So they did have their own fan base. There's somebody I wanted to ask you about. I don't know if you knew her or if you ever had seen her. Do you remember a woman who used to go to the shows with a hat pin by the name of Hat Pin Mary?
Hat Pin Mary. It just turns out that I know Hat Pin Mary's grandson,
Uh-huh.
Paul Ween of Brooklyn,
Oh,
Ring fever.
from Ring Fever.
Fever Keeps It Real.
Keeps It Real.
I saw him a couple of months ago. My friend Wild Thing.
Right.
You might.
I know Wild Thing very well.
I don't know whether you should brag or complain about that, but
Oh,
he's
Well-
my ex-brother-in-law's brother.
Should he complain about knowing you?
Yeah.
Don't be a
You want to hear me?
yeah,
No,
dirty.
no complaints.
No, Wild Thing's
Must be here all night.
woman
Yeah.
had passed away.
yes, she did
And
just a few months
Paul
ago.
and his wife Julie were there with a bunch of the people from Fever Keeps It Real. Oh,
I
that's pretty
wanted,
cool.
I wanted to ask one question. Now, even though
the
you, yeah, I know, I project my voice very well. Thank you. But I've seen your films and other stuff. The weirdest place that you wrestled was in a classroom, or one of the videos that you showed me.
Oh, he's talking about when I was working with the World Wrestling Union.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now,
You-
where
You
was
said
the
you knew
weirdest?
Pedro Rodriguez, right?
Rodriguez or Morales?
No,
No,
Pedro
Rodriguez.
had the
APR.
the Arena Puerto Rico in Brooklyn.
Pedro Rodriguez.
Little
Well,
Puerto Rican guy. He had his son as the champion most of the time.
I do
Yeah.
believe I met him some time ago.
Yeah, well,
yes.
what Craig is talking about is this small company from Brooklyn called the World Wrestling Union was using Pedro's equipment, only he stored it in a classroom, a regular sized classroom.
Mhm.
And it was very hard to work in around that ring. It was
Yeah.
like I think it was a 16 by 16 foot ring, and he had it in a classroom with a couple of lockers. And
Yeah, it was so small,
Yeah.
You couldn't.
you had to go
breathe
out of the
in
room
there.
to change your mind.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that room was small, but if you stuck out your tongue, it'd be in the hallway.
Yeah.
The size of a phone booth.
Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
think the phone booth was bigger.
Probably.
But we wrestled, the World Wrestling Union wrestled in that classroom hundreds of times. But when Pedro would have a show, and the World Wrestling Union wanted to do a show before his,
Mhm.
he'd let them use the ring down in the gym where it was set up for that night's show.
Yeah.
That's what Craig's talking about. I wrestled there a few times.
Yeah.
I still have no idea why.
You said the College of Staten Island. So was there like any weird places that you wrestled in, Pitbull?
Well, there were a few places I wrestled in Jersey City back when I was linked up with Tito Torres and All American Wrestling back in the 70s, back in the mid 70s. He, at the time, being that he couldn't afford altogether that much, we used some very small venues too, which only could have held maybe 200 to 250 people at a maximum with the ring there. But nevertheless, I always try to be a professional, even if less than 30 people showed up. If I was booked, I was there. And of course, never got paid very much, but I did get an awful lot of experience back then. See, Tito was a very good teacher. He was a very conscientious teacher. And what I also liked about him was he knew how to talk to troubled kids. He just had a method of communication with troubled kids.
Well, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
And he had a gym that he was using in a storefront, and he also had a method of operation when it came to teaching the new fellas. Every other Friday, he would conduct a show there, and he would book these fellas in so they'd get experience working in front of a crowd. And it worked right to specification. His crowning glory, as far as his promotions were concerned, were at Roosevelt Stadium back at the time when they had it. And then there was the Bergen Line Arena in North Bergen, New Jersey, where he drew tremendous crowds. He was the kind of a man, kind of a promoter that he rather would have taken a financial loss and paid all the boys off when they worked, rather than keep something for himself and then have the boys shortchanged. He was a man with a heart. He was a man with a conscience. And
Real man of honor when you
yes,
think about it
yeah.
that way, yeah.
Yes, he truly was.
Unlike Rob Fury and his people.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know if you know those guys.
well, yes, I
Chino
certainly
Caruso.
do. Well, fellas, I have to say this. I live by a certain principle. If I have nothing good to say about certain people, then it's better that I say absolutely nothing about them, especially on
right.
television.
Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
can dig that, yeah.
And it's these characters. They're not like the people that I dealt with when I was brand new in the business. When a man made you a commitment back then, a promoter made you a commitment,
The
made you a
handshake
promise.
was his bond.
Exactly. You had promoters. If they promised you $300, I guarantee you went
They
away
gave
with
it to you.
four. No, you more than likely went away with four.
Wow.
They were men of honor.
They
Yeah.
certainly were men of honor. One of the best co-promoters and trainers that I had come to know. We started off with a very rocky beginning. We didn't get along very well, but then when we got to know each other, then we developed a very powerful mutual respect. And he was a Native American named Bobby Bold Eagle.
I've heard that
Yes,
name.
he trained me for that match, for the United States Heavyweight Tape Fist Championship. Now, here was a man who went to numerous countries to wrestle. And every country he went to, he learned the style. He was patient, and he was also caring. And he was interested in whether the boys learned or not. You know, he was an unbelievably good
He was the
teacher.
type of person who would try and let you know that you're doing something wrong.
Always, always. He'd give you special attention right there to see to it that you did it right. Now,
Something
now,
Pedro never did either.
and
Oh,
you see,
God, no.
now you see, Bobby had a school of his own, and most of the wrestlers that I've come to know afterwards were either trained by him or retrained by him. Jason Knight, I believe, was one of them, and
I think I know Jason, or I've met him.
Jason was so good that when he started doing indie shows, they automatically pulled him for WCW. And he also did some work for WWF before it became WWE.
He also worked for ECW, didn't he?
Yes, he did. He worked
yeah.
for ECW for quite some time.
I think I
and
have met him.
And he was very popular. Now, you see, Bobby had a very successful school, but Bobby was so generous with his boys that if they couldn't afford to make the monthly payment, he'd say, come to the school and train anyway. Consequently, he lost the school because of finances. And-
Lack of money.
And
Yeah.
what happened was, that I've heard it said many times that when you make friends with an Indian, you've got a friend for life. And whoever said that was right smack on the beam. In August of '91, I was booked into a match with this college kid, some Weisenheimer, some braggart, some egotist. Everybody had to know, before he'd even introduce himself, I have a 6th-degree black belt in karate. Oh, by the way, my name is Gorgeous Greg Starr.
I've heard of him.
Star, I think was he the one in the APR years ago?
I don't think it's the same guy, but I've heard of him.
Because we did have a Greg Star there.
Okay, now what happened with this character was, like I said, he really had a tremendous opinion of himself. And you talk to somebody who's talking about how, he pinned this wrestler unofficially, and this wrestler happens to be a big commodity in this federation or something or other, whatever. It reaches a point after a while where you figure, you stick this guy with something sharp, and he's going to explode just like a dirigible because he's full of hot air. So they booked in. It was August 25th of '91. It was a Saturday night. And they had me booked in against him at the Jersey City Boys Club at number 1 Canal Street in Jersey City. And I remember the promoter of that show telling me over the telephone, he said, Duke, I want you to know this. When they ring that bell, he's all yours. I said, well, that's all I want to know.
Yeah.
Why do I get the feeling they wanted somebody to knock this clown out?
Well, I'll tell you another thing. I had never seen so many promoters flock to a show, to someone else's wrestling show, to see somebody really get flattened. I couldn't believe it myself. Don Rock, the former Tape Fist champion, he was there. I remember Dennis Galam of UWA, he was there. I forget just how many others were sitting ringside. And of all people, Bobby Bold Eagle was supposed to work that show, but couldn't because his mother, rest in peace, she passed away earlier on that week. So he wasn't, needless to say, he couldn't work. But what shocked me was that he came there that night. And I mean, here's a man grieving for his mother, who he loved and was very close to, and he can't wrestle, but what's he doing here? And he came down to the locker room looking for me, and he pulled me out into the hallway. And, you can see that the tears were still welling up in his eyes, and he's telling me, he says, listen, Duke, I'm warning you right now. This is a warning from a friend. He's going to try to beat you some way. He's going to try to get that championship, and I'm telling you right here and now, if he beats you tonight, if he gets that belt or anything like that, I'm telling you right now, don't you ever come back to my school. I said, hey, Bobby, take it easy, man. So he actually, he was so incensed. He smacked me. He says, do you hear what I'm telling you? Are you listening? You do hear me, right? If he beats you, you don't ever come back to my school.
In other words, he was telling you, knock him the hell out.
Yeah.
Well, I knocked him out of the ring a couple of times. That I did do.
That's the one with the pink tights, right?
Yeah, the one with the pink tights. And after,
You mean that wasn't Gino Caruso?
well,
No.
Gino and I were
Well, we'll talk about that in a little
Well,
while.
yeah, he and I were friendly back then. Altogether, this kid got done. Or rather, I got done. He knew he was in a fight.
He had to wash his own blood off
Yeah, because
himself. didn't
he was in the corner holding his stomach saying time out.
Time out. I grabbed hold of him. I just hit him with a couple of lefts, rights, and a few uppercuts. Pulled him out. And when I hit him so hard I knocked him 3/4 of the way across the ring.
Oh boy.
Yeah, knocked the wind out of him too.
He was there. He was airborne.
Oh, yeah.
Sort of knocked him into La La Land.
Yeah.
Mental note: don't ever make this man mad at you.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, you're tired of the way you're living.
It was a
believe
lot
me,
less painful ways to commit
Believe me,
suicide.
out of the ring, you'll find me to be a very non-confrontational person.
Oh, we've had nice conversations
Yeah.
at times we've gotten together. So yeah,
Basically.
basically outside the ring, this man is a gentleman.
Yeah, he's got
Well,
class.
he's got a nice lady here, so she basically brings it out in him. Speaking of that, I wanted to ask you about some of your experiences as Pitbull's manager.
It's great. I like to see him beat the crap out of people in the ring. Especially people I don't like. I say, get him, Duke.
Yeah.
Ah,
Well, she gets a little loud and excited from time to time.
just a little.
Definitely do, yeah.
Just a little.
Can you tell us a few of the behind-the-scenes things as his manager that you've been through?
Well, behind the scenes, I mainly do the photos, promote him, hand out flyers and everything to the fans, take pictures to the restaurant with me so he can sign so people can know who he is
Yeah.
really, and promote other shows. Even if you want me to promote shows like yours, what show he's going to be on and everything
Well, she's helped me train also, believe it or not.
in the gym. I hold a heavy bag.
I hope she wasn't your sparring partner.
No, definitely not.
No.
I'd have to consider twice how much I'd hate getting knocked out.
Okay, I'll try to remember that.
No, at time, she'd be standing right there, giving me a spot while I'm lifting something extremely heavy, or telling me my form was a little off. Next time, try to do it, a little
Oh,
bit
basically
stricter.
giving you
She's a good
training
trainer.
tips so you could do things a little better.
And in the ring, I tell him, Duke, watch out, watch your back. This opponent's going to do this. Get him.
And then she cheers like crazy when he does get him.
Yes, I'd be screaming. Even some of the wrestlers be mad at me. I don't care.
Well, can't say I blame
When he
you.
was fighting the Peacemaker, Peacemaker was mad at me.
Was there?
Peacemaker. I've heard that name, I think.
Well, Peacemaker does a lot of work with ECPW. He's a dead ringer for the big boss man, physically and plus his uniform. And he's another one who's a very good straight wrestler.
Yeah, he
To
was
come right
first.
down
He
to
was
it.
afraid to come out because Big Papa Pump was telling him what you're gonna do to him.
Well, look at it this way.
Papa Pump.
It was
Scott
the
Steiner?
yeah,
Yeah.
it was the other fellas. It was the other fellas in the locker room. What happened was, I didn't find it funny. I confess, I was upset when this was brought to my attention because I didn't know just what had been said. Some things are funny and some things are not.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and these fellas are, they're all in there telling them, they're teasing them about, hey, you remember what happened to this one? You remember what happened to that one? You remember what Duke did to that guy? Well, watch yourself because when he gets you in that ring, you just might be next because he forgets himself, which is definitely not true.
You forget
yeah,
yourself? What is that supposed to mean?
That means I just go in there and I throw the rule book out the window and I'm just going in there for a kill, which is honestly
Somehow I
Not
can't
true.
see something like that
No.
from someone like
No,
you. You don't
no,
seem to be
really,
that.
no.
right.
Like
and
you
this-
said, you're non-confrontational
Right.
away from the ring.
Exactly. And I found out about it afterwards. He was nervous because we told him this, and this. I said, something, guys, that's not funny.
Yeah.
That isn't funny.
It's not at all.
I said, that's not funny at all. Really. A lot of things could have happened. So in other words, a nervous guy was going in that ring. He could have hurt himself because he
Yeah.
might not have been able to concentrate on what was going on. I mean, that isn't funny. I said, please don't ever do it again.
This guy wasn't a newcomer to the business.
Oh no,
was he?
he'd been around.
And they unnerved him that much.
Well, the same.
That's pretty bad.
It was the same nonsense. People. Sometimes wrestlers could be worse than washerwomen, especially.
Well, I've definitely heard that.
especially when they're all together in one locker room and the way they'll gossip. In '93, July of '93,
gossip.
yeah, July of '93 at Pace University, I was booked into a show there for the Correction Department's Widows and Orphans Fund called the Brawl for the Boldest, and I was booked in there with. Jimmy Snooker, Nails, Demolition, New Demolition. Now, I was wrestling Broadway Sonny Blaze that night.
I remember that.
Yes,
name.
and he did an awful lot of work with WWF. He was a seasoned pro and a nice fellow, too. So I was helping out in the locker room that night, and I already had my headaches. First shot out of the barrel, Chuck Wepner. God bless Chuck Wepner. He was there as a guest referee for the main event. And poor Chuck, nice guy that he is. He pulls me aside and he says, Duke, I've got to talk to you about something very important. So, okay, Chuck, anything you want. Now here I am. I'm looking all the way up at him, and he's got to look down at me. And I said, Chuck,
He was that big?
Yes. Oh, yeah. The man's a giant. And I asked him, what's the problem, Chuck? He says, they got me wrestling the main event. Refereeing the main event tonight. I said, well, congratulations. Isn't that an honor? He says, well, I don't know. I said, why not? I never refereed before. Oh,
That's
Great.
That's not a helpful thing.
I'm standing there with my hands over my eyes, hoping that the floor would just open up beneath me and just take me down. Because I'm saying to myself, why am I here? So I told him, I said, listen, tell you what, we're going to make it easy. Forget about the main event, all right? Don't worry about the main event. I'll fix this up with Tommy. I got the third match. You'll referee my match, okay? Don't worry. Just stay close to me. All right. Now, the next one. Here comes Sonny. Duke, I got to talk to you. It's very important. What's up? Listen, Duke, I'm going to ask you. None of those scientific shoot moves or anything with me. I'm not up on that stuff, and you got a reputation for violence. And I'm giving him this look,
Where the
Wait
hell
a
did
minute,
you get a
what
reputation
what
for
in the
violence?
what are we talking about, Sonny? You and I, we're going to go out there, we're going to do our thing, we're going to finish up, and we're going to go home with some money. I'm not looking to hurt you. What is this? Well, I don't know. I've seen you do some unusual things. I said, yeah. You saw me go at Boss Hog Calhoun like a windmill after he socked me in the face with a chain and he broke my nose with that chain. You remember? Well, I had a right to act on that now, didn't I?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, but I don't see any chains on you. I said, well, okay. I was just a little worried. I said, well, then you're worrying needlessly. Calm down. Everything's all right. Sometimes I'm telling you, some of the guys.
This is an interesting discussion. You've experienced a lot of very bizarre things during your run in the ring.
Well, I have. I've experienced some good things. I've experienced some, some pretty rotten things. There have been times I've had the time of my life. There were times I was very anguished. In '75, we had a show up in Manning Bowl in Lynn, Massachusetts. Now, they had plenty of time up there to promote that show. Manning Bowl is the size of Shea Stadium. If they had packed Manning Bowl, we'd still be living off that money. However,
That's a big guy.
they didn't push tickets. They didn't advertise properly. They did virtually nothing.
And gee, sounds like Gino Caruso
and
with the show I did there.
And Manning Bowl drew about 40 people.
That's it. Oh,
That's
man.
all. Now,
How big was the arena?
about the size of Shea Stadium. It was tremendous. Tremendous.
And he drew about 40 people.
about 40 people. The place was
that's
Good promoter.
it
Remind me
was
to
empty.
talk to him next time I want to book a show.
Yeah,
Now,
right.
Dr. Jerry Graham worked that show, and Jerry, okay, he was very sober, straight as a rifle shot, well focused, mind very sharp, And there he is. He's sitting in the locker room with the rest of us, drinking his black coffee, and some politician comes in, some guy running for public office, another one of those actors.
No,
co-
it wasn't
comes
Ronald
in-
Reagan, was
Comes
it?
in, no, Reagan was the only one who meant business. We need another Reagan. That's what we need now.
Okay, let's not get
But,
into politics here. This is a
that's
wrestling
different
show.
story. Right. And Jerry's sitting there, got his pipe in one hand, got his coffee in the other, and this character comes walking in there. He's introducing himself. He was running for some public office there, and so I tell him, "Hey, nice to meet you, sir. I'm in show business too." You know? So he stopped talking to me. Then he goes over to talk to Jerry, and he asks Jerry a couple of questions, and I knew exactly what he asked Jerry because I heard Jerry's answer. And he says to him, he says, "Listen, the only thing I know in life of that's either fixed or predetermined is the judicial system, politics, and the Vietnam War."
Ah,
So that answered all the questions right there.
okay. Must have annoyed that politician, huh?
Oh, well, the more politicians you annoy, the friendlier I am to you.
You know, I get the distinct impression this man doesn't like politicians.
Yeah, no,
I
not a
don't.
bit, no.
Ah. Okay, I can understand that. I'm not exactly fond of them myself.
Well, yeah, I don't think
I'm
anybody likes
thinking
him
this
that
year, I
much.
was gonna
Oh,
vote
yeah.
for Trump, but I'm thinking maybe I'm gonna put a write-in candidate. Either Captain Lou Albano,
Or Mick Foley.
nah, I was
Captain
thinking maybe Alfred
Kangaroo.
Newman.
Yeah, Alfred Newman. right.
Alfred Newman probably do a better job, too.
That's
Well,
for
you
sure.
know, it's just,
I'll tell you one thing. If I was in the White House, I'd turn things upside down.
that might be an idea.
And we'll-
Pitbull, Luke Schneider for
Yeah,
president.
we'll endorse Pitbull.
Believe me, I would turn things upside down. Ah, boy.
He'd do all the stuff Trump is promising to do.
Yeah,
I'd do it 5 times over. Hey, I've already got a plan about how to block off the Mexican border.
You do?
I'm probably gonna be sorry I asked, but,
Yeah, we
What
want,
is
we
that
gotta
plan?
know.
not Wall or
Okay.
Geed, right?
Now, on a very serious note, if I was left with the task of blocking off the border and separating Mexico from the United States and keeping the drug cartels from crossing over and keeping the child pornographers from crossing over and things of that nature, for one thing, this is definitely something that would have to be federally sanctioned and also afforded by the government itself. It comes right down to this. We can do this with chain link fence, honestly. 30 feet below surface, 50 feet above surface. Every 5 miles, a concrete blockhouse armed by federal officers, Border Patrol people. A helicopter or helicopters
Right, that works.
travel a certain distance to observe everything on ground. Motorized patrol with dogs.
can I put you in as write-in candidate for president?
You're the one who would do
Most
things
certainly
right.
can. Well, I would do things
Yeah,
100% right. You see, we have, like I said, that's been a critical problem that everybody's been totally ignoring. They all say it's impossible to deal with. It's not impossible to deal with if you got the right people.
Look at it this way, you just came up with a perfect solution.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Huh.
besides the theory with the wall of Donald Trump and Clinton.
Well, he's basically talking the same thing, but would Trump do what Duke just suggested?
But more advanced, more than just a regular wall, you know.
Yeah, Trump
Well,
wouldn't
you'd
have
have
the
to have somebody
brains to
guarding
do it.
that
Yeah.
wall,
But you see, any kind of a wall that you build, whether it's a wall or whether it's a fence, I don't care what it is, alarm systems, you name it, it can all be done. Unfortunately, a wall, a concrete wall, that'll wear away in time. A chain link fence, somebody can eventually cut through that. These
Well,
things
if you
happen. You
electrify
know
it,
what
they
the
can't.
only thing that keeps these things from happening is human manpower.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
Oh,
We
yeah,
could
that's
think.
true, pretty much.
That's the only thing that'll do it is human manpower. Physical observation, patrols, foot patrol, motorized patrol. It can be done, air patrol, it can be done. It's just that they don't regard it to be serious enough.
Yeah, well, that's true. You know, we've got a little less than 20 minutes left. We somehow steered off course from the original
Wrestling
discussion
to
here.
politics.
To politics.
Let's get out of the politics department
and get into something more important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good. How about the
Like,
politics of wrestling?
Yes.
Well, there's something you've talked about. You told me a few things about backstage politics with wrestling.
Well, back no matter where you go, what you do, there's always backstage politics, whether it's with wrestling, whether it's with movies,
Yeah.
TV, all these different things. And sometimes it's constructive, sometimes it's destructive, but it's sometimes it's also it's a necessary evil. You know, you
I've noticed in some cases backstage stuff like that can be destructive. Many years ago, I don't know if I told you about this, at Pedro's Arena, Puerto Rico, his son was the Arena Puerto Rico champion.
okay?
Mad
Yeah.
Dog Joe Stone was the challenger. It was a Russian chain match. And Pedro, in the locker room, tells Mad Dog, don't upstage my son. There's a Japanese film crew here.
Okay.
And basically, Mad Dog took that the wrong way. Not only did he upstage Angel, he put him in the hospital.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
No, he actually, what happened was, it was a chain match. You know how
Oh, yeah.
things get with a chain match.
Do I
Midway
ever.
through the match, they're both outside the ring. Mad Dog wrapped the chain around Puerto Rican Gladiator's body, power slammed him in a brick wall. At least 4 broken ribs. They get back in the ring. Mad Dog takes the chain, wraps it around Angel's neck, and throws him over the top rope.
He could have
Then he pulled the
yanked-
chain back.
He could have very easily broken his neck.
He was trying
Yeah,
to.
he lynched him. Yeah. Oh, he
But
hurt
then
him.
then Mad Dog did the impossible. He got disqualified in a chain match. He picked up a ringside chair and broke it over the Gladiator's head.
Yeah, a piece of it went
Chair wasn't
flying.
designed to break.
Well,
Just because Pedro told him, don't upstage my son.
well, for one thing, a promoter should never have a son as a champion, in my opinion.
A little bit of too much
A little,
nepotism,
a
as it
little
were.
bit too much power, too much ego, things of that nature. If
Perfectly describes
if
Angel.
if
Oh,
my
yeah.
son, okay, if my son, who almost did go pro at one point, had been a pro, and I had anything to do with the administration of that federation, I would have told him straight out, you'll become a champion when you earn
Right.
that right, and it depends on your experience and your attitude, okay? Because once your ego starts swelling your head up a little bit, and when you go to scratch your ear, you're scratching it over here,
Yeah.
it's time for the wind to come out of your sails.
Yeah.
You know, hey, I told him even back then, I said, pride cometh before the fall, pal.
That's true. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I said, and as a champion, I said, as a champion in any federation, the first thing that you better start looking out for isn't yourself, isn't that strap, and it isn't your pride and glory. It's for the betterment of that federation and the fellas that are in it.
Right. Yeah.
Well, yeah, very
definitely.
good advice there.
Because you've become a champion, obviously, because they feel that you can do good by the federation. And if you can't, it's not.
They end up taking the title off of you. If
Yeah.
you know, if you're not selling
Well,
or you're not drawing crowds, stuff like that,
Right.
they'll
Well,
immediately remove the title from you.
well, that's my entire argument. You see, a system survives only when those who are a part of the system are willing to make certain personal sacrifices.
Put the right person ahead of yourself, as it were.
Yes.
If you're not fit for that position, let somebody else do it.
oh yeah, it's like be good to the people you meet on the way up. You're going to meet the same people on the way down.
If you're lucky enough to make it on the way down, because sometimes terrible things can happen while you're up there.
Right? Yeah,
Well, yeah,
that's
that's
true.
true.
Sure.
Look at what's happened to some of the champions we've known over the years.
Yeah, I know.
You know, Mad Dog's been in ill health for the last
Yes.
couple of years. Warzone passed away.
Right. Yeah.
Carnage passed away. I don't know if
Uh-huh.
you knew him. He was a youngster with the World Wrestling Union. Got his stomach cancer. He was the WWU World Champion for a couple of months.
Shame. It's truly a shame.
Kid was
Yeah.
a great wrestler too. But he actually brought honor to what he was doing for an independent promotion that wasn't making any real money or anything. You know, he was doing it for the love of the business.
Well, that's the point that I'm trying to make, that things like this have to be looked at from a proper point of view. You can't look at it from your own personal gain. Because if that's what you're doing, you're really not going to last very long. You know, we're all eventually going to succumb to age in one form or another.
Well, true,
Yeah.
or injury.
Right. Injury you can get at any stage of
Yeah.
life. The bulk of the injuries that I got in this business in 42 years, believe it or not, did not come from the ring. It came from weight training at the gym.
Right, you
Ah.
said before the show.
That's where the bulk of my injuries had come from.
How would you have done that?
Well, for one thing, about 10 years ago, a little more than 10 years ago, I thought that I had a herniated lumbar disc, which turned out to be a dislocated vertebra. And it was pressing right into my spinal cord.
Yeah, man.
And that was the result. Some people said it must have come from squats or deadlifts. No. It came from standing overhead presses. And it knocked the thing out of place, and it just became further and further dislocated until a surgeon in Manhattan actually had to reconstruct my lower back and did a very good job of it, too.
Thank
Did an excellent
God.
job. Fortunately, I was back in the gym 2 weeks later, and I felt fine.
No, it was less than 2 weeks.
Well,
Because when you got out the hospital, you lift the suitcase in the taxi cab by yourself right after having surgery. And then you were jogging in the park the next day and driving your car.
Damn. They usually tell you after surgery like that, don't try for at least 2 weeks.
well, actually, I was feeling pretty good. All in all, like I say, it was all a question of the types of weightlifting exercises that I've been doing. I have, like I say, I've always been into the heavyweights, to build size and power. Then, after a very heavy workout, I'd always go to the heavy bag and I'd hit the thing about 600 times so that I wouldn't get arm weary. I always took training very serious. Unfortunately, there have been times I took it a little bit too serious, and I overdid it.
Well, you hear wrestlers doing that all the time, though.
You see, here, I'm a man who, I've been fortunate. I never got involved with steroids or enhancement drugs. Maybe that's why I don't have the same problems that other people do.
Right, that's true.
I am going to be 66 years old, and
Whoa, you don't
well,
look it.
thank you, and thank God for small miracles, I do not have arthritis.
No.
Yeah, thank God
Yeah,
for
I'm
that.
56. I got arthritis,
I mean-
degenerative disc
The
disease.
thing
don't
is,
look it.
You know,
I'm older than you.
I'm wearing a mask.
I'm
How could you
60.
tell?
I'm 61.
see,
You
think,
don't
No,
look it either.
I'm 60. I'll be 61 in August.
Okay.
Well, these women never look their age.
yeah.
Yeah, it's in most cases. I've seen a couple of
10
when
years
you say they
younger,
don't
yeah.
look their age.
Always
They
like 10 or
look to be
15
about
years
93 and they're only 40.
Yeah.
Oh, I've seen quite a few myself.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately, I always just try to be polite. But
Yeah, right. So,
Anyway.
like, be nice to them.
see, all in all, I always try to do the right thing. But then again, there have been times that didn't exactly work out too good either. So today, people ask me questions like my son Eric. He asked me something over the website the other day. He sent me an email. And he asked me, am I still pumping iron, and am I still running at the park, and I'm still doing all these things? So I told him, I said, Eric, don't you know, at my age, I don't lift weights anymore. I just lay under them.
Okay. And you let me guess, you let your spotter lift them for you.
Well, look at it this way. When you got a spotter, the guy exercising shouldn't even have to touch that bar. The spotter does all the work.
Because I'll be in
yeah.
the gym with him. We have a built-in gym in the house.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I did that back when I bought the house back in '74. The first thing I did was I converted one of the bedrooms into a weight gym, and I still use it to this very day. I saved myself a lot of expenses on gym membership and stuff
Oh, I was
like
going to
that.
get ready to go to a gym and go to his house instead.
yeah,
Yeah,
that
you're
way.
welcome.
Hey, you're definitely
You're welcome
welcome.
to come to use our
I-
gym.
I got no
No
problem
problem
with
at
that at
all.
all.
Okay, you know what you do? Give me your address and we'll discuss it after the show.
Yeah,
I
you
do
want
want to
it-
start working.
and
out.
then,
No problem
then
at
it'll
all.
be
You got
one excuse after another. Trust me, you won't, you won't be bothered.
Spike, do me a favor.
Don't
Don't
help.
do me any favors.
Yeah.
I'm only being honest with
Yeah.
these people. Don't lie to them.
You see, fellas, actually getting right down to the origin of many things here. My championship, my training routines, things of that nature. A lot of it stemmed from childhood. My childhood idol was Sonny Liston.
The boxer.
That's right. boxer, Sonny Liston. And I idolized Sonny because that was a man, I used to watch him as a youngster. He could have knocked someone out with either hand. And, just looking at this powerhouse, a young kid looks at someone like that and says, man, how I wish I could be as big, strong, and tough as that guy is. Lo and behold, I didn't anticipate it ever really happening.
You must have been quite shocked.
Well, actually, I was, and so were my parents. Yeah, as a youngster, my father, may he rest in peace. He was he was a real character. He used to stand me by the wall in the living room, and he used to make me punch the wall. And every time I made the hole in the wall bigger, he used to laugh because it was a sign I was getting stronger.
That's interesting, actually. Yeah.
Yes, he was a character too.
He was helping you to build up strength and stuff like that.
Yes.
He didn't mind all the holes you put in the wall.
No, that didn't bother him.
That's
He
an
didn't.
understanding father.
He didn't.
Very.
He didn't have to fix it. He didn't care.
Who fixed them?
But he left him that way until I got old enough to fix him.
He made you fix your own damage.
Precisely. Well, he was a good disciplinarian, so he waited.
Apparently.
Yeah, he let me wait all that time.
Ah, yes. Well, you're like, what, 15, 16 years old, punching the hell out of walls, making big holes. You get to be 18, 19. He says, oh, by the way, Duke, you got to fix this wall.
Yeah, which one? The one with all those holes in it.
And mine is ripping up license plate with your hands.
Well, that was a strongman stunt.
Yeah.
Ripping up license plates with your bare hands?
Yeah.
Well, what happened was this goes back a few years. She was involved with this cable company in Brooklyn.
Yeah, I was signing autographs.
Yeah, Starfire Entertainment, and no, it wasn't that.
Very
It was
racist on
Vin.
film.
No, it was Vinny. Vinny
Vinny,
was
that
hassling
crappy
you.
guy from outside by Ninja Theater.
In short, he was putting you down. He was making you feel real. He was making you feel real bad about yourself. So I'm not the kind of a guy that's going to grab somebody in an alley and beat the life out of them. That's not me. But I do know how to communicate. And I ran into him at a Chiller Theater Fest, and I showed him something. I said, Vinny, come here, I want to show you a little something. I was purposely carrying a license plate for his benefit, and I took the thing out, took it out of the bag, and I said, I want you to watch something. I took the thing, and I did, in fact, rip it in half.
Wow.
And I handed him half of it, and I said, I want you to take this as a keepsake, because the next time you make her cry, that's what's going to happen to you.
All right.
I'll bet he never got on your case
No, he
again.
Yeah.
No.
As a matter of fact, we became very good friends after that.
Yeah, he knew better than to make an enemy out
Yeah.
of you.
Yeah, this is true. Well, this has been a really interesting show.
Yeah, very good show. It's always good when Pitbull is on.
Yeah.
And well, it's
Thank you.
always good when we have
Thank
an interesting,
Yeah.
Yeah,
intelligent
in
interview
spite of you,
subject.
in spite of you
Thank
two
you.
morons.
Oh, never mind.
No,
Never
listen,
mind.
when I kill him.
Uh,
Might be
Yeah.
right after the show.
Yeah.
He
never
promises
his mind.
promises.
Never his mind.
He's too lazy to bother. He's scared
Well,
of me
like
anyway.
I said, I wouldn't mind getting together with you and working out and training a little
No
bit.
problem at
That's
all.
not a problem at all.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
Definitely
yeah, I'll
not
go
a
with
problem
you.
whatsoever.
Do
Yes.
you want to talk about what's coming up this Sunday?
Oh, well,
You know,
yeah, we've got a
because
few
we have
minutes
about,
left.
About like 8 minutes
okay.
left.
Not even that, but
Well,
what Craig's
less than
talking
that,
about
but-
is this Sunday is the WWE pay-per-view on In the Bank. Anybody got any predictions? I know
Well,
somebody's going to win the title. Somebody's going to win
Yeah.
the title.
well, we know one thing is for sure. Somebody's definitely going to go in and come out with the championship, whether it's the current champion or we have a new one.
Yeah, it'll either be Roman Reigns or
Well-
Seth Rollins. The thing is interesting. It's a Money in the Bank show.
Ladder match.
One of the main things before the main event is a ladder match for the briefcase for Money in the Bank.
Which is a contract.
Dean Ambrose made a promise that he was going to win that contract, and he might cash it in the same night. We may see the world title change hands twice. If Seth Rollins
possible.
beats Roman Reigns, and then Dean Ambrose beats Seth Rollins. What would your thoughts on something like that be?
Actually, the way these shows are promoted and conducted, I really have no honest prediction because the tide can go either way, right up to the very last second.
Well,
It-
true.
it can
Vince
go
has
in
been
either
known to
direction.
swerve people.
Well, precisely, that's my entire case in point. So it's very unpredictable, and it's really hard to come to a decision when it comes to a thing like this. It's very unpredictable, and The true complication is that I haven't watched anything with WWE in I don't know how many decades.
I think the current champion is going to get that money.
Well, actually, what it is Money in the Bank means guaranteed shot at the world title. There's
Okay.
a contract inside the briefcase.
Okay.
Whoever takes the briefcase down gets a shot at the title anytime
Okay.
he wants it.
Okay.
And what it is the main event of the show is Seth Rollins challenging for the WWE Championship.
Okay.
That's currently held by Roman Reigns.
Okay.
And there's two of those ladder matches, aren't there?
No, there's only
Just
one.
the one?
There's only one.
Oh, and then they'll probably have other.
Oh, okay.
But there's 6 contestants going
Okay.
for that.
They'll probably have
Okay.
briefcase,
They'll
yeah.
probably have other
Yeah.
matches, for the tag team title, the
And, you know,
intercontinental
a little
title,
filler.
the women's title, stuff like that. But that's the main thing. They
Okay.
win the contract. They can cash it anytime over the next
Oh.
year
Okay.
for a shot at the belt.
Within 1
Yeah.
year, yeah.
You see, once again, I may be very, very old-fashioned and I might be very outdated, but we talk here about ladder matches and things of that nature. And my argument is, what has a ladder match really got to do with match-style wrestling?
It's true.
Nothing when you
doesn't.
think about it.
Yeah, it's nothing to do
Exactly.
with it.
It's with that. I mean, basically, it's lost its perspective. I would like, at some point in time, to see everything go back to a time where
Yeah.
we had wrestlers like
Dominic Danucci,
Danucci,
Dino Bravo.
Dino Bravo. Further back, let's say Ed Strangler Lewis.
Well, I'd like to see that myself. Get away from the sports entertainment aspect
Get
of
away
it.
from the entertainment aspects.
Yeah.
And turn it back into the sport
and
it
turn,
was.
and turn it right back into a sport. You
Turn
see,
it back to wrestling.
you see, Strangler Lewis. He was, he was not a big muscular man. In fact, he was outrightly fat most of his career. But he was by far one of the greatest mat technicians that there ever was.
Well, I do remember reading that about him.
Yes, he was an outstanding floor-style wrestler. And the one little known fact about Strangler Lewis was also a law professor.
Whoa.
Wow.
He was.
Yes, he was. He
Oh
did
my
law.
God.
That's
Well,
interesting.
they said that George the Animal Steele was actually a history professor.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah, in English and
Something of that
history.
He also
Yeah.
taught computer science.
Oh, you wouldn't think so.
Yes, he
Ah,
taught
excuse
computer
me.
science.
Dude, how much time we got left? Got to wrap it up? Okay, well, let me just say thank you, Duke, for being here
Oh,
again.
thank you
I
for
appreciate
inviting
it.
me.
So
I
great to
appreciate you
have
being
you
here, Countess.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for
And-
being
Thank you,
You're
sir.
welcome.
These two jabronis I had to put up with, but
Yeah,
don't
well,
listen to
you know,
this
we always
moron.
have to put up with
Well,
what else.
we're going to be getting out of here in a couple of minutes, folks. I hope you actually enjoyed this conversation
I
as
most
much
certainly
as
As
we
much as
did.
we
Yeah,
did,
yeah.
It was
yeah.
a very enlightening hour. I
Yeah,
mean,
and all
Yeah.
the
Thank you.
history there, yeah.
Duke
Yeah.
had a lot to tell about his experiences in the business. The Countess, she had a few things to tell us about
That's
the
true, yeah.
experiences with Duke. So I hope everybody enjoyed it, and
Like
we're going to see you the next time.
Yeah, we have a special announcement for the next show.
Actually, the next show, more than likely, will be the series finale. I'm getting
Right.
a little too old for this. Like I told Duke, I want to get into training again.
you're more than invited.
All right, thanks a
Okay.
lot. So see you next month.
You know it.
Uh,
Say it, say it.
Yeah.
I can't see these.